Nice. I like that little
Yeah,
jingle. Boom,
yeah.
da,
That's
da, dun. What would you call that? A little funk, kind of, maybe?
it was a little fun. It was very cool. Very
Yeah.
cool. Good job, Lee.
Yes.
Welcome to Solid Ground. Wait a second. Is that what we called this last week? It wasn't. We had a different name.
No,
So,
it's
but
whatever it feels like it's going to be this week, that's what we call it.
yeah, we'll
Yeah,
come up with a new name next week. I kind of like this one though because it's like solid ground. Like
it is kind of
we're
cool.
standing on solid ground. We walk on solid ground.
Hopefully, yeah,
That's so
yeah.
profound.
It is. It
Yeah,
sounds like something that would be in the Bible. Just guessing.
it does. It does. It's a perfect name for this. What do we call these things? Vodcast?
Well, I thought it was like a video podcast, but then I was like, why don't we just call it a vodcast? Vodcast.
Podcast.
Because
And then live stream podcast.
yeah, it's many things. It's live, it's video, it's podcast. So if we could combine that into some cool word, Lydiocast. I don't know. That's
Yeah.
not working.
It's
That's not
something
working.
like that, but it's just, we keep fusing technology and having to come up with these things, these names.
Yeah.
But I like Vlogcast. That's kind of cool. Maybe someone else has used it and we're just really slow.
I don't know. I
And
think
we,
it's unique. I've never heard it before. I'm really gonna trademark that.
yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, we should, yeah, where are you? Like I have the same background. I'm always in Seth's room.
I think what I should do is go to a different place every single time. It's like the Where's Waldo? Like where in the world is Carmen San Diego? Whatever. Like you have to guess where I'm at.
That could be fun.
It
You're
could be.
wearing the same shirt though as you did last week. Was that intentional?
Am I?
Yeah.
Hmm. Wow. Well, that's my official
I was
vodka shirt.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I like the black, it's very, makes the glasses pop.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's
So
so
that's
anyway,
good. How
I'm
was
in an
your
office.
week?
I'm in an office in Ambridge, Pennsylvania, by the way.
Oh,
My week, it's really weird. At first, whenever coronavirus uh, uh, hit, it was like there was 2 weeks maybe where it was like, okay, trying to adjust schedule. How do you do online? What does that look like? And I was not extremely or excessively busy, and then once now that I'm into a routine of it, I feel like I'm just as busy as I was before Corona hit. But the difference is a lot of what I get to do is at home, so it's like I have some kind of presence at my house with my kids and stuff, but um and so I'm not always out like at an office or meeting somebody at a coffee shop or something. um
yeah.
but the flip side of that is that my wife thinks that she owns every single second of my time because
You
I'm
talked
home.
about this last week.
Oh, is it a recurring theme?
Yeah, the honey
I
to-do
should
list comes
probably,
out.
yeah, I should probably seek
Yeah.
some kind of therapy about this.
Yeah, I don't know. See, I just locked myself down in Seth's room, and every once in a while, Seth, sort of tries to sneak in, and I just give him the evil glare.
Hmm.
I'm working, and then he scurries back out again. But
Yeah, my
yeah.
house. It's impossible to do that at my
Oh
house.
yeah, I know. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
you have like at least one person every 3 or 4 square feet.
That's
So
pretty close, pretty close. And for
yeah,
for those who do not know, I'm like an architect by degree, and so I design. I have two different lives. I do ministry, and then I also do design. And but I'm very much into small design. Like that's my sweet spot. And so I bought a 1,200 square foot house for my family of 10. And some people would say that is absolutely ridiculous and and harmful to my children, but I love it. I like it.
yeah.
It's a challenge.
That reminds me of the story of how you convinced me to kind of do the same thing.
Mm, well,
Yeah,
I'm an
it's all your
influential guy.
fault.
What can I say?
Yeah, we downsized about 3 years ago, and you actually designed our remodel. You did a good job with it.
Oh man, yeah,
So
totally.
we live in
Totally transformed it.
in a smaller house too. But we only have 6 people. Well, actually, we only have technically 4 people living in our house when the college kids are not away.
Right, but and when one of those college kids is home, he's like the size of 3 normal people. So
that is true. Yeah, Seth. Yeah, Isaac is. He's sort of like Arnold Schwarzenegger now.
yeah.
I just saw him the other week. We went out to Latrobe to celebrate his birthday. He's just massive. I stand next to him and I'm like,
He is massive.
This boy could not have come from me.
He has to like turn sideways to go through doorways. That's how big he is.
Right. That's true. Yeah. So, yeah, well, my week was kind of busy too. I'm kind of finding the same thing. It's like, there's a lot of work to do, and my days are very full, and I'm finding too. I don't know if you're getting this problem, but I'm like on Zoom all the time, and I've got different headphones I use because I have these big ones, which I wore last week, and they make my ears hot. And when you're on for like 4 hours, like I was starting to get like an infection or something. It was like I was getting, I know. I don't know what it was. My eardrums were hurting, and I was getting like fluid in my ears. And so I got these new earbuds, which are better. But like I'm getting I like Zoom and that whole thing. But, it does get a little old. I think a lot of people I've been running some like programs and stuff, which has been cool.
Yeah.
I started discipleship forum this week with
awesome. How is that going?
Yeah, I think it went really well, but I'm biased. But the group was really engaged. Everybody jumped right in and just right into it, and everything went smooth.
How many folks you got doing that?
So 15. We capped it at 15. Wanted to start with kind of a smaller bunch, but I know people in the parish grouping heard about it, and we'll have more cohorts. So it'd be great to fill those up too. But yeah, I'd say probably half of the people are from the great grouping, and then the rest are people from just around the diocese. But yeah, awesome. It was good.
That's awesome. There's great stuff. There's great stuff. The whole Zoom thing, never did it before this. I would FaceTime people individually, but I'm actually really enjoying it because it's the only way really that you can have a face-to-face interaction with somebody. I mean, it's obviously not ideal, but there's this new, of course, the coronavirus is inventing all these new phrases, and one of them is Zoom fatigue, and people are suffering from Zoom fatigue. But I really like it. I love the potential of not, people don't have to coordinate schedules to meet at the same place. So in that way, it seems like it's a lot more convenient for people to just open up a laptop or their phone and jump on in a conference or a class or whatever right there in the comfort of their home, which is really cool. So I don't know. I don't have a problem with it. And I'm on probably 6 or 7, hour to 2 hour long Zoom calls each week.
Yeah. No, I've been on. I think the technology is cool too. I'm not complaining about it, but it can be a little bit tiring, going, just having a lot of meetings and stuff. But hey, at least we have that.
That's why you have to get things like Snap Camera, and where you can do all these ridiculous, goofy filters on your face while you're talking. In a very formal meeting, like a bereavement committee meeting, and you've got a clown face on.
That's good. Yeah, you would do that. So what do you call like a video phone call? Is that like a phone call?
I don't know. You just put the letter V in front of whatever it is, and it makes it video something.
Right.
I'm conferencing right now. I'm video conferencing.
Right. Yeah. There you go.
So.
Well, hey, our topic.
Yeah.
So we thought we would talk about fear and faith today.
Ooh, scary.
Yeah. And so I was thinking about this morning, how there's been this evolution through the Corona time. And it started out with everybody being afraid of the virus, the mysterious unknown virus. And now, at least as I look out there on different platforms, people are getting tired of quarantine. People are getting tired of masks, and new research is coming out to show that it seems to be clearly like an overkill strategy that's outdone its time. Although a lot of people still don't feel that way. But now there's a lot of talk about people being afraid that the government is taking over the world. This
Yeah.
is a grand conspiracy. So, any rate, one thing that I've just observed through all this is that there's just a lot of fear. There's a lot of fear. People are just afraid, whether it's afraid of getting sick, and I don't want to knock fears. You know, fears are real for people, and fears, you know, we're wired to be afraid of things that are scary. So that's not, you know, that's not a bad thing. But faith is very important to us as Christians because it's sort of God's antidote to the problem of fear and anxiety. He tells us so many times to not be afraid. And he actually chastises his disciples often for not having enough faith, like when they're afraid. So I think it's a good thing to talk about right now. Like, how can faith help us through something like this? I mean, you know, is there going to be a second wave? Will there be other viruses? How might we respond differently to something like this?
Yeah. You know, I think that there's always going to be something else, like whether it's a second wave of the coronavirus, whether it's another terrorist attack, whether there's, you know, and so I think it's such a great topic. And I'm going to tell you about my own reaction from the get-go, and you can kind of make comments on that or add to that. But there was a time in my life, I think, whenever I was a very fearful person. I was so incredibly afraid to fly for a certain period of my life. And I think it was
I was too.
Yeah. And it was probably in my early to mid 20s. Right. And I would most definitely say that was a time in my life before I was sold out for Jesus, you know, but I didn't know that at the time. I wasn't thinking that kind of a thing at the time, but I was terrified to fly. And when I look back on it, I was terrified to fly because my life on earth was pretty much the most important thing, you know, and I didn't want that to end, you know, like I had dreams, or I had goals or aspirations of things I wanted to do. And so every time I would fly, I would just always be like, what if this is the end? What if this is the end? But I gotta say, you know, like whenever I did have this kind of change of heart and became, yeah, I don't know if you'd call it a conversion or whatever, but there is something very powerful about the perspective that faith gives you, where you don't really lead with fear anymore. So when this whole thing came down, my first reaction was totally not to be fearful of it. And you know, so I guess what I'm saying is, I always think about, like, well, what's the opposite of fear? You know, like why was I afraid? And I would say, number one, because there's multiple things. I would say one of them is that the opposite of being afraid is like not having enough information. You know, so you're talking about people wanting to fear the government, or these conspiracy things that are coming out now that Corona has been out long enough. There's a bazillion videos and blogs and, you know, online posts about all of these connections that people are making, you know, this person about how the government is working with the Chinese government, and Dr. Fauci is, you know, colluding with evil intentions. And I think that's a huge basis for fear, is that we don't have enough information. Like when you have enough information about something and you feel confident about it, you don't really have fear about it. But I think there's just so much out there that it just causes people to be really afraid. They don't know what they can trust. They don't know what, or, you know, like what they can believe.
Well, I mean, that's legitimate. The trust issue is important. Who can we trust today? What voices are telling us the truth? And I had sort of a interaction with Lynn the other morning, just as the narrative that you were just describing was sort of like beginning to kind of get pieced together. These videos were going around about Dr. Fauci's dealings with AIDS and this certain other doctor, I can't remember her name right now, but and there was the other video, the two doctors out in California, asking these questions. It is interesting that those two videos are gone off of social media now. That does make you wonder, why. I mean, if there's no validity to it, why would you take them down? Who cares? They're just
because it violated the community standards, man.
Yes, right, exactly.
Yeah.
But my point to Lynn was, okay, so let's say all this is true. First of all, how do I verify the narrative? How can I verify that? How do I actually know that this story is true or this story is true? And of course, that can create enormous anxiety because I don't know how you get to the bottom of it. Like standing in my position or sitting in my chair, I'm just listening to different claims that people make, different narratives that people string together. And so we can get just overwhelmed with anxiety around, what story should we believe? And that's, and I said, and even if we knew it was true, what could we do about it? I mean, you can share the video, but it's sort of like, so I always go back to this thing. It's like, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I don't like to focus on conspiracies. Why? Precisely because, well, first of all, most of the time, I don't think they are conspiracies. I think people who are up to things that are no good are usually pretty open about it anyway. Like, everybody's like, the government's trying to impose a mandatory vaccine on us. It's like, I don't think it's a secret. I mean, Bill Gates goes all over the world talking about everybody needs to get vaccinated for everything. So it's not like there's some conspiracy. It's just really a question of, do you agree with that or don't agree with it? But I think the more important point from this perspective of faith is Jesus is always saying, where is your attention right now? What are you focusing on? Are you focusing on things that, that create fear in you, that make you anxious? Are you focusing your attention? So if you go back to the story of the apostles in the boat, that's getting tossed around and he's sleeping on the bow of it, he chastises them for being afraid, right? Because where they were focusing their attention was not on him. And they weren't trying to, figure out, well, what is he up to right now? Why would he be sleeping right now at this moment? Of course, he's trying to draw himself to them because that's kind of provocative. Like you're in the middle of a storm and he's sleeping.
Right.
Let's see, well, he's calm. So perhaps we should be calm too. And maybe if we're calm, that calms the storms around us. Maybe we help contribute to the storms because we become, we get all stirred up and we make waves by our anxiety and our fears and our hysterical responses to things and our rash judgments and overreactions, rather than centering our lives really on, the calm in the storm, which is Christ himself.
Yeah.
Okay, and then I talk too much.
What ends up, it's so full of wisdom though.
Yes.
I feel like what ends up happening and this is where it gets so tricky. Really good people, well-intentioned people, let's say that I have the opinion, and I do, of what I've read, and I've formulated my own thoughts about this. And I just, I think it should have been a more regional approach. I don't like the one-size-fits-all thing. What's happening in New York City is most definitely not happening in rural Pennsylvania. And so it's like, do we really need to, have everybody doing the same thing everywhere? So I've got different opinions about that. And there was a great graphic on Facebook, I don't know if I sent it to you, that had like COVID-19 talking points, and they were all of these like, well, I think we should take a more reasonable approach to, or, like maybe a regional approach. And then on the right side column, it said translation. And after every reasoned statement, it said, I hate people and I want them to die. And it's like, I feel like that's kind of, if I have an opinion where I think maybe the response was a bit extreme. There could have been some more nuance to it. People will jump down my throat and make me out to be this extremely what do I want to say? Like just not I'm irresponsible. I'm being completely irresponsible. I don't care about people's lives, and so it's like I don't know how like good people that I know are very much on this like we just gotta we gotta follow this one way. And it's like, who are you trusting? Ultimately, who are you trusting? That's really my question for them. Like, who are you putting your trust in? Like, I get it. I get that you need to be safe, but is the Lord even a part of your response to this? Because I just feel like there's a peace and a trust and a comfort and a lack of fear, that comes with a deep, deep relationship with Jesus. And I'm not seeing a lot of that. I'm just not seeing a lot of that.
Yeah. No, I mean, I would agree. And I think that, part of, how do I want to say it? When I look at this whole situation, what I do see a lot of is a lot of fear. And again, I don't want to invalidate people's fear. The fear of the unknown is really scary. And, a virus, that could level populations, that's scary. But regardless, I think from a faith perspective, the Lord always tells us not to be afraid. He always tells us to have faith, to trust in him. And there's a reason for that, because we don't necessarily see clearly when we're afraid. When we have excessive fear, it conditions, it shapes our view of something. It can exaggerate. It can cause us to be impulsive or rash. It can cause us to withdraw rather than face whatever it is that we need to face. There's a lot of different things that fear brings about. It paralyzes us, right? So regardless of what it is that we face, it's just like back to your example with the airplane. You could have died on any of those flights.
Yeah.
I used to feel the same way. But the bottom line is are you going to not get on the airplane? Is what you're going to focus on. So there you are, you go through the flight and you're white knuckled the whole time. And then you get there and it was fine. And you think you could have had a very different experience if you entrusted yourself to God in that moment and let go of that fear, even though the danger of flying an airplane is real every time you get on an airplane. By the way, every time you get in a car too, right? The odds of getting in a car accident are a lot higher. That's what helped me become more, rational about flying in airplanes. Is there was more danger in driving to the airport than there was flying to the destination that I was trying to get to.
Mine was gin and tonics.
I remember that when we went out to Denver a couple of years ago. It was a Bloody Mary, though.
It was an early flight, yeah.
Yeah, it was. But at any rate, it's so fear shapes the way So sometimes I think Jesus he chastises the apostles for their fear because they don't see what they should see. They don't get it because they're so full of fear. And other times he chastises them for not having faith because they're not trusting Jesus in the darkness and in the uncertainty and in the unknown, as if God doesn't know what's happening, as if God can't see what's going on, as if God's not present, God's not involved. God's got his back turned and he's distracted, and he's like, oh, sorry, I didn't realize that you guys are going through this viral pandemic right now. Here, sorry, let me stop what I'm doing and I'll pay attention to this over here. He knows fully well what's going on. All of this falls within his providence. Even if there are people conspiring, even if there is, collusion going on or cover-ups or things like that going on, he still knows what's going on. He's still at work. He's still moving history in the direction that he wants it to go. He's still saving souls. He's still comforting the afflicted. He's still doing all the wonderful things that God always does. It's just that we happen to be focused on this scary thing, and that's where our attention is. And so we feel as though God is not there. God isn't in charge anymore. God's got his back turned and isn't paying attention to all these terrible things that are going on. And I think that, as Christians, we can fall into that trap super easily.
Oh yeah. Let me ask you a question, because as you're speaking, I'm thinking of this. I'm a huge, like, I can't stand whenever words become redefined, right? There's meaning in words, and it's powerful, and it's pretty much basically all we have as human beings is our language to convey thoughts. And so words are extremely important to me. And as you're talking, I'm thinking about maybe that there's this blending unnecessarily and probably harmfully of fear and concern, right? That it seems like as Christians, we are called, and it's perfectly great for us to be concerned about something, right? But I think it's where it becomes unchristian. And I know you keep you're validating people's fears because people have them, and it's normal. But I wonder, should people be fearful or should people be concerned? Like, is fear ever a good thing in the Christian realm?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say it's probably better to say fear is part of being human. So we feel fear when we are faced with an evil that we believe or think is going to defeat us. That's what gives us fear. And to the extent to which we think that threat is real is the extent to which we become paralyzed in our fear. So on one level, we can't help the emotional response we have to the unknown danger that threatens us. But this is why faith becomes so important, because faith is sight. It's not blind. Faith helps us focus on what gives us the hope to say, this isn't going to defeat us, because nothing in this world can defeat us.
Right.
Because in Christ, we've already won.
So I think that kind of, for me, that goes back to this whole, one of the opposites of fear is and a reason for fear is just a lack of trust. And you don't trust the outcome, or you don't trust the greater thing that's going on. And I think, at least in the Christian Catholic realm, I think people oftentimes assume that faith is something inherent to us, and meanwhile, if I'm not mistaken, faith is purely a gift, and we really, if we want to have faith, we got to ask for it. We have to ask the Lord to give us that gift, at least maybe more abundance of what we already have. But I also feel like if you're going to ask for that, if you want that faith that we're talking about that elevates you past the fear, you have to trust. You have to trust in a higher power. You have to trust in God. And if you that's the bottom line. If you don't have a trusting relationship with the creator of the universe, the person who, can see us through every kind of trial and difficulty, then it just seems like you're always going to be mired in fearful reaction to things.
Yeah. No, the underlying question is who do you believe is in charge here? Do you believe that God is in charge? One of the greatest exercises I ever did was actually going through and reading the Old Testament from beginning to end. I hadn't actually done that for many years into my studies. I just never did it. I read here, there, and everywhere in the Old Testament, but I never read it beginning to end. One of the things that really struck me more than anything is that God writes history. He writes history, and somehow he does it without violating human freedom. That's amazing to me. But he plays the nations of the world like chess. So he prophesizes about what's going to happen in this nation and that nation, and what's going to happen in Israel, and then as time goes on, as the prophets begin to write, the prophets are now explaining how God's fulfilling all of those sort of things that he said he would do. And so I think one of the things that, first of all, we're just afraid of evil, right? We're afraid of physical evil. So we're afraid of, tornadoes and earthquakes and hurricanes and diseases. Okay, we're afraid of moral evils, right? Bad people who do evil things to people, especially random acts of evil. I know for myself, I'm more comforted by an evil which makes sense to me. Like it's like, oh, that person was involved in some sort of drug trade. That's why that person got shot down in the streets. I'm not involved in that kind of thing, so that's never going to happen to me, right?
Right.
But when it's random, when someone just randomly does something like that to someone, and of course with coronavirus, now we see the convergence of these two things together. So we have this kind of natural evil, this virus, which could have been manufactured in that lab in Wuhan, and maybe was it released? And were there American officials that were involved in funding that lab? And was this I mean, these are some of the theories that are starting to come out now. And of course, again, you think, well, everybody's afraid of evil, but the bottom line is who's in charge here? Do we really believe that those forces of evil, those people, do we really believe that viruses dictate the course of history? And so regardless of what we're undergoing right now, regardless of what we're experiencing, as hard as it is, right? As Christian people, we, above all people, should be able to entrust ourselves to God's providence and believe that no matter what's happening right now, He's in charge. And I don't need to be afraid. I don't need to be afraid. I like you said, I should be concerned and responsive.
Yeah, that to me is the ideal Christian response to all of this. Like, somebody might think, oh, well, if I have faith, does that mean that I don't care what happens, or I'm not I'm not trying to improve whatever the situation might be? But I don't think it's that. I think faith, first of all, is the foundation that we have. We trust, like you said, who's in charge, that we understand that it's something bigger than ourselves here. And we know, like, as Catholics, we know what the end of the story is. Like, so, and this is the thing for me. I'm at a point in my life, and this might sound really weird, but I'm not even afraid to die at this point. Like, maybe if somebody had a gun to my head or whatever, and there would probably be some peed pants there, but
Yeah, probably.
I mean, when I think about the concept of dying, I'm not afraid of that. And it doesn't mean that I act irresponsibly, or that I don't. I'm not worried about how my actions affect somebody else around me. I do, and so I feel like those two concepts work together really well as an opposing force to fear. Is number one, your faith that that God's got this. Like, He's got it. What the end of the story is. Jesus died. He rose from the dead. Like that's the end of our story as Christians, which is eternal life. And it's a fantastic thing. But in the meantime, your response to issues that are difficult or trials is that you have concern, and I'm seeing that right now. Like, the differences. There's the people that are standing out on their porch, and you want to bring them over a meal, and they're like, no, don't, like, just put it at the end of my driveway and I'll come out and get it. And then even if you have a mask and gloves on, and and then I'm seeing down here at the food distribution we do, like, people, the concern is just overwhelming. Like, the response of concern is overwhelming. Like, there's a lot of people that are working right beside other people to get families meals and food, and if everybody was so afraid, things like that would never happen. And that's, to me, that's where concern kind of trumps that. Fear and concern they're two very, very different things.
Yeah, no, I think that's well said. In fact, there's a verse that I wanted us to talk about, which is there in Scripture, where it says, "Love casts out all fear." And I've often been struck by that, because I'm like, I thought the opposite of fear was courage. And I do think that on one level it is, right? You face fears with courage, but in faith gives you courage. But I think what's interesting, and this is what we see in the lives of the saints, I think, is that no, it's love that's the opposite of fear. When we really are full of love for God, and we're really full of love for our neighbor, we just the saints show us that you just go and you meet the danger and you don't think about it. And we can think of people that have, run into buildings on 9/11. We can think of people, people who have just gone to help people who are diseased and sick and eventually catch that disease and die. What motivates them is not that they're so brave. They're probably not brave when it comes to a lot of other things,
right.
but they have a lot of love in their hearts for people, for God, and so when we really are burning with love, and I think that's very much what you're saying about concern. Concern is an expression of love. It's a responsive love, and when we have that, then it's not that we overcome fear. I don't think we are afraid. I just think we do what needs to be done in love for other people and for God, and that's why it says love casts out fear. It doesn't overcome fear, or it doesn't push us through the experience of fear. It simply removes it and takes it away. So faith and love, I think, are very closely tied up. With each other, as we know.
I would agree. And I'm seeing that. I'm seeing that on a daily basis. The first time people came and were helping out, whether boxing food or organizing the pantry or even, handing out food. Some of the people came in full garb with masks, gloves, and and they would very gingerly hand the meal to the person through their car window, and it's like, okay, it's a really great thing you're doing. And I would never minimize that, but a lot of people coming there have a greater need than just for food, and you can see how it's trending now, where sometimes people's masks will slide below their mouth and they'll be reaching into the car window to put it on their seat, just that their concern for the people and all of their needs, not just the need of food, is starting to show through. Like they're not being irresponsible. They're not, hugging people and doing that kind of stuff. But you can see that it's not so much. Before, I think it was maybe a fearful reaction at first. Like, I don't know how much interaction I can have or how much touching can go on, or I don't want to, be anywhere near their inside of their car. And you can see it. You can see the evolution of it, and it's a beautiful thing. But I wanted to, this is just kind of an aside, unless you have some more ideas on that, but I do want to talk about these conspiracy theories. They're kind of fun, I think, to talk about, Is that okay?
It is, but can I just make one comment about your last point?
That was a horrible
well,
segue.
It reminded me of the conversation we had the other day about Fauci's comment about, he hopes that, maybe we'll just get rid of handshaking altogether and just banish it from. And I remember when I read that, I was just like, you have got to be kidding me. The first thing that came into my mind was, this person is a germphobe.
It's exactly what I thought.
It's a germphobe. So absolute fear of the microbial world, which is ironic because it might be the reason why he's such the expert in it. Like, he's going to conquer this invisible enemy that he's been afraid of his whole life. I don't know. I mean, I don't want to over psychoanalyze him, but that's a bizarre statement. Really? Like, it would be better for us not to have human contact with each other to avoid disease. And I'm like, no, as a Christian, I'd rather die of a disease and hug someone. I think about this all the time, like with my own kids, like when the flu goes around. And, I remember I always marveled at my parents who took care of me. It's like, don't you ever get worried about getting the summer flu? And they'd always get, oftentimes they would get it after we would get it. And then I became a parent. I'm like, oh, I get it. Like, you're not going to think twice about it. Your kid's throwing up. You're going to go in there. You're going to help them. You're going to, especially when they're little, and you're like, yeah, I'm probably going to get stomach flu. And I've had it a million times and it sucks. It's horrible to be, worship the porcelain gods. Nobody looks forward to this, but
right.
I was so afraid of the stomach flu as a child. And as a parent, I wasn't afraid about it anymore. So I think about like what's running our country right now. again, I don't want to knock, people's professional judgments about these things, but there's a deeper wisdom, and the deeper wisdom is you can never buy into a view of reality that would say we should ban handshaking from our expressions of human affection and relationships in order to,
Right.
I mean, he means for all time. Like we should just never do it.
Sure.
And that's, I just like, what's your view of humanity? What can you possibly think about human relationships? And it just shocks me. So I just wanted to say that the fact people were putting their masks down, reaching into the car, stuff like that. We want to be prudent, we want to be cautious, but there is something to say for expressing love and affection. And you think about people like Saint Damien of Molokai, who went in and took care of lepers.
Right.
Like for us as Christian people, that is the standard. Not that we want to spread disease, obviously, and we have to be mindful of that, but we also have to use some prudence and some good judgments around the other dimensions of human existence that are important, and communicating love and affection and care and tenderness to people, and saying, there's a calculated risk perhaps in this, but it's worth taking, especially knowing what we know now about the virus and the mortality rate and all of that. And there's a lot of hype around it. So anyhow, I just wanted to get that in there.
No, that's a great point, because I totally agree with you. I not in as nuanced terms as you just laid out, but my reaction to that statement was, I don't know if and this is a trust thing. I don't know if I trust being advised by an extremist. And I'm, and that is not at all any statement on this guy's credentials and what the work that he's done. However, I find myself being much more comfortable taking advice from somebody who I feel like is has reasoned thinking, and is not on one end of the spectrum or the other. And for that to be one of the first, big quotes of this guy's tenure as the guru of Corona, I don't know. I have a lot of hesitations about the advice given to me by somebody who thinks in those extremes.
Yeah.
So anyway,
so conspiracy theories.
Yeah. Because I find these fascinating, man, and it's everywhere. My family is exchanging texts and videos, and in this day and age of there's so much information, and it's constant, and it's coming from a billion different sources, and we're sort of conditioned, some of us at this point, to be skeptical of mainstream media. Some of us are conditioned to think that everything mainstream media says is true. And but you alluded to earlier these two specific videos. One of them is the two doctors in California who run a series of clinics, kind of like MedExpress type quick care clinics. And and they're not seeing anybody at their clinics, and which is a concern to them, and because there's probably people that are suffering in homes and need treatment, but they're afraid to come out and be treated. So there was that video, and that video was taken off of YouTube. At least you can find it on a million other sites, but YouTube took it down because it violated their community standards, whatever, as if YouTube has like so many standards. And then the other video is this plandemic, documentary that's coming out of this woman, this doctor who worked in microbiology and she was working in the vaccine world and worked with AIDS patients and AIDS treatments, and she's coming, they interviewed her, and she's got all of this stuff that she's saying about the relationship between Dr. Fauci and the pharmaceutical industry. She touches on patents, that colleges are seeking constantly, and making it out to be this big money grab for a lot of in a lot of the case. But my God, how do you sift through all of that stuff to to and who knows whether you'll find a truth. And I think your answer is probably going to be that there's something greater that if you never find the truth to that. But those things are fascinating and they're compelling. They're really well done. And if you find yourself getting sucked into them pretty easily.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, they went viral, and I do think there's some utility in videos like that because it at least makes people think and question the narrative and think, oh, maybe everything I've been hearing on the news is not exactly true. Now, I don't know if those. I mean, the two doctors with the clinics out in California. I mean, that's like mainstream media recording that. That the context in which that was presented was very credible. The other video is very produced. It was produced very recently, and it's very clever. And so my first stop is, okay, well, how do I know that this is true? How do I know that this is true? This is really well put together, but for all I know, this woman could be, unless I dug into it really deeply, which who has time for that? But this woman could be somebody who had a falling out with Dr. Fauci, maybe got fired because she didn't do a good job, and this whole story is fabricated. Or maybe she really did steal stuff and it wasn't planted, and she really did have a warrant for arrest. I don't really know.
Plus, she's writing a book. She's, there's the bad timing of the fact that this is coming out right around the time.
Yeah, talk about making money, right? Yeah,
right.
Talk about making money. So, my wife and I, we follow like a couple of principles that we try to follow. First of all, follow the money trail. Again, another verse from scripture, the love of the inordinate love of money, or the love of money, is the root of all evil. Not money itself, but the love of money is the root of all evil. And there's in these times of ours, that gets a lot of mileage, because you can find a lot of corruption, right? When you follow the money trail and realize that people will cover up a lot of things where there's money to be made. They'll push things with half truths because there's money to be made. And so, but it's like, okay, is that news? Is that a news flash? Like, does that surprise anybody? Like, do we wake up one day and say, oh my gosh, abortion is about money? Really? Assisted suicide, it's about money. And you point that out to people and people are shocked. People don't care about death with dignity. They're using people's fears to make money. People don't really care about the ideology of abortion. They're making money. Is that a conspiracy? No, I think it's just the naked human truth about fallen human nature.
Yeah.
It's all over the history books if you study history. So I always say, let me just dig a little further into this, that I'm not a conspiracy theorist, because I don't think people sit around and plot evil for evil's sake. I think what people do is they pursue what they believe are good ends that might actually be evil ends. And then they will employ any means to those ends because they feel justified. So you might look at a scenario like what's going on right now, and like I said, I don't really know the facts of what. I'd have to be an investigative reporter, and that's not my job, and I don't have time to do that. But the bottom line is that, I believe that Dr. Fauci believes that what he's doing is the thing that ought to be done. Now, I would hold a personal disagreement and say, I think he's wrong. And some people will come back at me and say, well, are you the expert? You're not a microbiologist or an immunologist or whatever, his field of science is. Okay, you're right. I'm not, but I have common sense. I have wisdom. I understand human relations and the human condition and human nature. And I can look at a situation like this and say, this is what I think happened. I think what happened is they overreacted. They don't want to admit they made a mistake because they suffer from pride just like I do. And so they keep the narrative going. They keep everyone doing this, and they're trying to have a rationed dial down. So they come out looking like the heroes of the story, because honestly, if I was in that situation, I'd probably do the same thing if I screwed up. And a lot of people do. A lot of the experts are put on this, spot, and they've got to have all the answers, and everybody wants them to, So I don't know. I mean, these are kind of some of my thought process. I don't know if any of them correspond with reality or not, but the thing is that I think that we can get caught up in these conspiracy narratives and drive ourselves absolutely crazy rather than stepping back and saying, should I even waste any time trying to
Right.
figure this out? I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy, but what do you think?
No, I think that's. I mean, I'm agreeing with everything that you're saying. And I keep for my, when I read something like that, if somebody passes along something like that to me, and I'll read it. My initial reaction, I think I said this last week. I'm generally a skeptical person, so I really need something to be obviously true for me to really jump on board with it. And it's because I don't want to live in fear. I think if I didn't do that, I would probably, my initial reaction would be like, oh my gosh, like, what are they trying to do to me? It's not like they're trying to pull the wool over my eyes, or they're trying to, take away my freedoms, or whatever it might be. And that's never my immediate reaction. It's just always like, I don't know. I need to feel pretty certain that what's being told to me is the truth, because number one, I don't want to be ignorant, and I also don't want to just blindly comply with something if I don't have a real understanding of it. So that's just kind of my personality. And it really, oh gosh, I think it just ultimately, I'm going to bring it full circle, but it's true. Like, for me, it's always just faith takes over. It does. So I feel like I'm always like, when the grand scheme of things, what is this going to mean anyway? This is such a little blip of inconvenience in our world. And granted, there's some major inconvenience that's been happening with it, but it's just a moment in like a greater spectrum. And praise God, for me, that's just a gift, I think, where my faith kind of speaks that language into my heart. And so I'm not too worried about it. I'm not too, even if Dr. Fauci, maybe there is a journalist, and there are journalists that are digging to really, really, truly kind of reveal this, kind of like the spotlight thing for the abuse that was happening in the church. Like, maybe there's a group of people that will kind of dig and find this out. Like, fantastic. Then, awesome. Justice will be done. But in the meantime, I'm like, I just want to, I want to serve people. I want to give food to people that are suffering. I want to, go for hikes and walks with my family. If I have to hang out with a friend on their porch, and stay 6 feet away, I want to do those things. I just don't want to be I can't imagine having an existence where I'm driven by being afraid of this, petrified to the point where I can't live my life. So that's a lot of jumbled thoughts right there. Whew.
Yeah. Well,
Take
for
that
both of
and
us.
tie a thread
Yeah.
between it all.
Yeah. All right. Well, but I think, to bring it full circle and come back to say that, faith, when we're living through something like this, faith is just extremely important because it gives us perspective. It tells us where to keep our focus. It helps us resist the temptation to get, caught up in things that we can never resolve ultimately, or never get to the bottom of. And even if we could, the bottom line is we are called to try to see things as God sees them, respond to the world, respond to our life, respond to the things right in front of us with Christian virtue, and to do the very best that we can. So yeah, there's, we talked last time about the importance of obedience and patient suffering and inconvenience and sacrifice and things like that.
Right.
We're talking here about the virtue of faith, of concern and care and love. These are the things that we can do. These are the things over which we have control. I mean, granted, if I'm a government leader, or I'm in a position to do something about what could be a corrupt thing, or some sort of collusion that's going on, I have a responsibility to do something. But the average citizen, we can't. It's like spitting against the hide of a dragon. We just can't touch something like that in any real way, except for to get all spun up. It's funny. The other day, I mean, just as an example, that video, the second video, part of the reason I'm talking about this is because of what happened to me that day. So I had an important thing in the afternoon while we were launching Discipleship Forum, and I knew that my attention and my heart had to be focused, there, because I had to be ready interiorly for launching that first, our first, event. And in the morning, Lynn shows me that video with the doctor and the interview and all that. And I mean, I just completely got spun out into the ditch. And I got like upset because I was just like, my first thought was, what if this is true? Like, this is terrible. Like, this is horrible. All the people that have died. And I was really like upset about it, and I'm like, and I remember about halfway through the day, I was just like, okay, this is ridiculous. I can't get to the bottom of this. I don't know if this is true. I can't, all the things I shared earlier, in the video. These are the things that were going through my head. And so I thought to myself, okay, Lord, I turned to the Lord in prayer. I said, just help me to just trust you that, I don't need to worry about this. I got to keep focused on what you're asking me to do today. And it was so obvious to me that the devil just completely, it was such a distraction. It's like, you're doing this great thing for the kingdom of God this afternoon, this evening, and I'm going to make darn sure that you're thinking about anything else besides that. And I was upset and frustrated myself at the same time, but by the afternoon, I was like calmed down. I was at peace, and I was like, I'm detached. I just am not worrying about this. It's just silly, It's what can I do about all the machinations and mechanisms of these principalities and powers in the world? All I can do is be a really faithful disciple of Jesus Christ and be a Christian and respond in faith, hope, and charity to the things over which I have influence in my immediate circle. And I find personally that one of the hardest things to do every day when I get up is to do that.
Yeah.
It's just so easy to watch the TV, to watch all the feeds, and and to get all sucked into all of these things. Just the fear mongering, it's like a, I call it fear fest. It's like a bunch of piranhas that just come in and, pretty soon you're gone. Like you're like just this corpse floating in the water. So, there's a nice image to end with. How's that? Don't let fear consume you. It's like, floating in the Amazon River,
But it does, man. It most definitely, yeah. It's so I like it. I like the main points, and it's a good challenge. It's a good challenge for me, and hopefully for everybody else out there. That just what you said, like waking up in the morning and living out your faith well is, through love, through charity, through forgiveness, through trust in the Lord. Like, those are really, really difficult things to do, especially during a time like this, whenever things are they're scary. It's scary for people. It's scary if somebody has like a predisposition for, or a suppressed immune system, or, it's a scary world. But the faith in God as, the person who is in control, who has a plan, and a plan that is better for us than we could ever imagine. Like, that's the hard part, to have that level of trust and then live that. But
yeah,
that's what we strive. That's what we're striving for.
Yeah, that's the challenge. That's the challenge to us. That's our witness at this time, is to be at peace during all of this.
Amen.
Yeah. Good. All right. Well, that was quite a minefield. That's good though.
It really was. It was. Yeah. It flew. The time really flew. So it must have. It was good for me anyway.
Yeah. Me too. Good. All right. Well, we'll see you. We'll see you before next week, but we'll be back next week with another topic.
Fantastic.
Solid ground. That's what we're calling this.
Solid ground. I like it.
We need to stand on solid ground.
And now, solid ground. We need a good voiceover.
With Michael Therrien and Scott Lieb.
Oh, yeah. Nice. I like that.
All right.
All right. Goodbye.
See ya.
Thanks, Mike.